Welcome to the funnel. My name is John Shea, and I'm president of Alignment Group. This is episode number 204, 5 Sales Coaching Best Practices. Before we get started, I want to remind you, head on over to alignment-group.com/the funnel and subscribe. We will send you the show notes every Thursday morning, 9 a.m. The show notes are emailed, in addition to some other content you might find interesting, as well as special items we throw in there occasionally. Let's jump into the agenda. 1, make it about them. 2, regularly scheduled time. 3, focus on helping them. 4, create structure. And 5, deliver on action items. If you remember last time I talked about coaching and moving the needle, this time I wanted to set up best practice. I know I said I was going to get into the one-on-one meetings, but I decided to do little best practices to help you set up for your coaching sessions. And coaching sessions can take on different looks and feels. They can be a one-on-one coaching session in the office or on the phone or via GoToMeeting with video or Google Hangout or something like that if you're spread out all over the place. You can do it as a group session with the sales team. So it does take on a little bit of flavor. Each one requires a little bit different discipline, but structurally they can be very similar. So I want to talk about I'm going to focus mostly on your one-on-one conversations, whether that's a meeting or a ride along or something to that effect, and kind of walk you through why you should make it about them. 1, as managers and VPs and business owners, we're not going to lie. We have egos, and some of us have large egos, and some of you have large egos. That's okay. It's a matter of keeping it in check. It's not always about you. It's not always about what you know and how you would handle it. It's about them. So think about it like this. A good therapist talks very little. A good therapist is good about asking questions. A good therapist is about extracting out of you the nature of the problem. And from there, how you overcome those challenges, asking you questions so you can help figure out how to overcome those challenges. And when you get stuck, prodding you along and offering some advice on how to solve that. But they really want you to take responsibility for that. They want you to grab a hold of it and solve your problem, because they know if they just lecture you on how you should solve your problems, nothing good comes of that. Now, I would say that all of us are guilty of that, from our own personal relationships to business relationships, and that's fine. It's just recognizing it and working very hard on overcoming that, especially when you're in a coaching session. So it's personal. It's about them. It's one-on-one. In the ride-along, in the one-on-one meetings, in the phone calls. I'm not talking about even the group sessions. When you're lasered in on somebody and you're having a conversation, it's about them, not about you. I said this last time, understand their strengths and weaknesses. Understand who they are. Don't just start making recommendations when you don't know anything about them as a company or as a person. Understand where they have tremendous amount of success and celebrate that and talk about that. This is where I think you really hit it this time. This is where you did a good job. Then walking through maybe some areas that need some work. Asking good questions are key. Now, for you, I would recommend writing down some questions. Figure out how to layer them. This is the same way you go through a qualifying exercise. You're talking to the client. You're talking to the prospect. You're trying to extract as much information out of them as possible. You're letting them talk. And when they get stuck or they slow down the conversation, you layer it a little bit. You open it up. Tell me more. How did that happen? Those types of questions. Why are you asking those questions? Because you want to get from them exactly what they're thinking, how and why they're approaching something the way they're approaching it, what's working, what's not working. Ask them how they're going to solve that problem. And then offer your advice. They don't have to be exactly like you. I know people that are very organized, very structured. Everything has to be laid out in order for it to work. I'm a little less structured like that. I can go into a meeting and have a really deep conversation and let certain things work towards me. Do I prepare? Sure. I understand the client. I do the math on the company. I do the research on the individual. I do all of that. And that's good. That's where I pull from people like that. There are other folks that are very warm. I had a guy I worked with, Bill. He had this smile. And we always gave him he always had the toughest things to do. I worked for him for years. And when stuff went south or deals went bad, it was a really bad situation. He would go in and smile. He was very tough and very difficult. If somebody owed us money or something to that effect. But he had this way of warming people up. That's not me. I don't have that kind of smile. You want to listen more and talk less, just like I said before. So if you're talking the entire time, you're off the mark. You're way off the mark. So to summarize this section, make it personal. One-on-one, you need to understand who they are, strengths and weaknesses, listen more, talk less, and ask really good questions. So your one question should elicit a long response. Your follow-up to that should elicit a long response. They're talking, you're listening, obviously taking notes. Regular scheduled time. That's an old thing they say on TV when they interrupt for a news bulletin. Not so much anymore because we have 24-hour news cycles where they preempt something for, let's say, an announcement from the president. Next week, we'll be back at our regular scheduled time. I digress. So I'd like you to stay on a regular scheduled time. Nothing gets in the way of that. It's weekly. For brand new reps just out of college, just starting in sales, twice a week is really important. I would suggest that. Make it weekly. Never gets canceled. It's habit forming. They come to rely on that. They come to rely on that from you. So that goes into your calendar and goes into their calendar. And, I got this really good appointment. Can we redo that? And we all are guilty of that. I'm not going to say I've done that. But that's not a good idea because that's when the bad habit starts. That's when it starts getting interrupted. You've got 5 days in a week, multiple opportunities for appointments. If that's the only time on this planet for the next 6 months that the client can meet or the prospect can meet, then we have a problem. Now, I would say make some decisions on a case-by-case basis. You know who takes advantage of those situations on your team, and you know who's real about that. Who never misses a meeting, never asks to miss a meeting other than vacation and sick time and personal time. Is always on, always there, always ready. And they say, look, this is very important. Okay, make a decision. You don't have to keep it set in stone. But the minute you open that up to every other thing, forget about it. It goes away. No excuses for canceling. Ever. Obviously, what I just went through for decision making, but you know what I mean. And show up on time and ready for them. That's hard. Sometimes you get delayed. But when that's a habit, that's bad. When you're 5 minutes late and you end 5 minutes early, that's bad. Or you're 5 minutes late and you're not prepared. That's even worse. That's the easy part. Getting that done. Now, some folks find that difficult. I know that. But once you get that habit in place, it runs like clockwork. I want you to use this one thing. And I know I've heard some podcasts in the past. I've done some podcasts. George B. Thomas, who does a HubSpot podcast. He does a bunch of stuff. He works with the sales line. Marcus Sheridan. They have the Hubcast. His whole thing is helping customers. Focus on helping them. His history's awesome, right? Talks about when he first started in sales, selling furniture at a furniture store. Just a great story. It's all about helping them. So keep that in mind when you're working with your team. You are helping them. This is not a performance evaluation. That's for another time. If you want an open, honest interaction, it has to be a safe place to have those conversations. Okay, I'm not talking about a safe zone with teddy bears and chocolate cookies. I'm talking about a safe place for them to open up to you about the opportunity and about what they're working on and what they would do without it being a performance evaluation, without it being an inspection process of the deals. You have a pipeline meeting, you have a forecast meeting. You have those meetings. You have a pipeline meeting, you're inspecting the opportunities. You don't need to do it here. Focus on the areas they can improve. Ask what they think. And the help should be based on current deals. So if somebody has a problem closing, let's say, I'll keep it simple, and you do a one-on-one coaching session and you focus on closing techniques and you go through fake scenarios, it's not as impactful as talking to them about their existing deals. So no one's perfect, right? So they have to have more than one thing that they're working on. And I would be very deliberate in laying out the plan in helping them solve that. But what I would do is focus on the current deals they're working on, because it gives them context they can live with, because the scenarios we lay out always work out in the end. People always answer the questions the way they're supposed to, and everything's cool. It doesn't really work that way in the real world when you're selling somebody. They react differently. You think they're going to react one way, and they do the opposite. They ask for crazy stuff. They say no for the nuttiest reasons. So dealing with that within the deal and helping them is the best way to do that. And as part of your process in developing this, what I would do is I would lay out the rules of the game. This is an open forum. In other words, I'm not going to inspect your deals. I'm not evaluating your performance as if your job depends on it. We are evaluating what we're doing in each deal as we coach, and it depends on the scenario. But if I'm on a ride along, we're going to talk about what happened in the opportunity. But this isn't about a performance evaluation. This is about driving higher revenue and getting better together. So I welcome, as the manager, I welcome feedback. You can critique what I'm doing, and you can say, what really helps me is this. Now, if it's something ridiculous, it really helps me if you take me to lunch and buy me a big steak. Okay. All right. What really helps me is if I can visualize it. So can we sit in front of a whiteboard? Well, that's okay. If we're in the office, sure. What really helps me is if I can get out of your office environment and sit in a conference room. It just feels better. That might be better for you to do that. Go to a conference room if you're a manager. But and I'm kind of giving scenarios here where you open up a little bit and get feedback from them. It's okay to get negative feedback. You won't die. Learn from it. If it's valuable and it makes sense and it's spot on, fix it and thank them for it. It's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength. Okay, we started on focusing on helping them and we sort of ended up with feedback. But I think and we'll talk about that. But it's important to understand helping means opening yourself up and avoiding the negative side of it, avoiding the inspection process, avoiding the performance evaluation, that kind of overview. Create structure. I think your meetings should have structure. They shouldn't be just this free-for-all. And the reason they shouldn't be free-for-all is that opens itself up to a big fat waste of time. Everybody loves structure. People love structure. Sales reps love structure. Kids love structure. They want to know you're going to leave at a certain time every day to get them to school, or that you're going to be there to pick them up. Babies especially love it. Bedtime. Boom. Okay, I'm going off the rails here. Sales reps love structure. They want to know, are we going to have this meeting every week? Are we going to have it on time? If I show up prepared, are you going to show up prepared? If it's valuable, they want to get something out of it. So to prepare for that, you should review the data, the pipeline, the forecast, etc. ahead of time. Create a meeting format. This is my format. This is how I'm going to manage this meeting. We're going to start with a quick update. We're going to go back to what we spoke about last week, and we're going to go into specifics regarding these three things, whatever it is. And you can pick the deal to talk about together. This is about coaching them to get better. And you want to stay focused on facts, not feelings. What I mean by that is if you're working on closing and they're giving you feelings and they're not giving you facts, that's a problem. Maybe the closing is just a matter of what's being done in the qualifying. Maybe it's being done somewhere else. So they get to the end and they have problems because they didn't do something right in the beginning. That's fine. That's fine. You can go back and touch on that. But what you want is facts, not feelings. I feel like they like me. I feel like they're going to buy from me. No, that's not good enough. What are the facts? Just the facts. Create a venue for next steps. What are your next steps at the end of that meeting? Here's the date, the time. Here's what we're going to do in the coaching session. Here's what we're going to work on. Maybe an agenda would be nice. Send out an agenda to your rep. Or just have an agenda planned at that point. But we're going to put some next steps in place. What has to be done? What are those action items? The next one says deliver on the action items. Everyone knows you should have action items at the end of the meeting. But what's the plan to execute those action items? You're going to do X, Y, and Z, and you're going to do it in this time frame. This is what's expected. And oh, by the way, what I mean by deliver on action items, I mean you deliver too. If there's something you're supposed to do, don't walk in there and say, I didn't get a chance to look at that. I'm sorry, I forgot. What did we talk about last week? Write it down. Put a note to yourself. Okay, I'm going to be honest. For me, I have to do it right away after the meeting. If I don't, I'm in trouble. So that's what I try to do. I write it down, and then I try to get it done right away. And if I can't, I put it in my calendar to pop up to say, hey, it's a task. I put it a task to pop up and say, hey, you need to do this before you're meeting with XYZ. So think about how you're going to ensure accountability on that. And what happens if they don't do it? Me, I stopped the meeting. Why didn't we do it? Well, we can't move an inch further until we solve this. So you get one pass here. So next week I need to have this end the meeting, move on. If they do it a couple of times, then you need to take some deeper action. I would put someone on a work improvement plan. Work improvement plans basically lay down the gauntlet. This is what we expect of you. Here's the expectations. You haven't met those expectations, and we're on a work improvement plan until we get that right. Our objective in a work improvement plan is to prove the work, not to get rid of you, to solve the problem here. But how are you going to ensure accountability on them and you? Because if you don't hold yourself accountable, they're not going to be accountable. They're going to know they can get away with it. So think about that on the action items. You don't just say we have action items and we're going to deal with it next week. Structure the meeting. This is how it's going to happen. This is when it's going to happen. This is what we're going to discuss. Here's the action items. Here's how we're going to hold you accountable to the action items. Maybe it's you have to put a note in the system, in the CRM, to say you completed something when you complete it. Or you have to show it in the system so I can see it while it's happening when I review. And if I get in there and I review before a meeting, then there's going to be a problem. And you can see what I've done because I need to get it done ahead of time. We hold each other accountable. It's not a bad thing. Thank you for subscribing if you subscribed. If not, subscribe to The Funnel, alignment-group.com/The Funnel. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. Contact me, jshade@alignment-group.com. Our website is alignment-group.com. Makes sense, right? Until next time, keep filling the funnel.